Will we see a major shakeup or retool with the Toronto Maple Leafs before next season? And will Mitch Marner be the guy in the core four that ends up getting traded? We'll discuss why that's a possibility and how it could actually help the team coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, we're taking a look at some trade talk around the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously right now, as I record this video, they're in a bit of a minor tailspin. They're in a 4-game, I guess we'll call it winless streak because there has been some overtime losses in there. But they've had 4 games in a row that they've technically lost, and they've also blown leads multiple times in all games. So holding the lead has been a major problem. The Maple Leafs right now, you could say, are probably only mediocre this season so far. They're pretty much just past the halfway point of the campaign now. As of today, now I'm recording this video a day or two ahead before it gets posted to YouTube, so the standings might be slightly different. So this are the standings as of Thursday before Thursday evening games are played. Right now, the Maple Leafs, as of last night, they've fallen out of the top 3 in the Atlantic Division for the first time in a while. It's been a long time since we've seen really the only 4 teams that have been in that mix in the last few years really been the Leafs, the Bruins, and the Lightning, mostly, with the Panthers kind of hovering around there a bit in the last, off and on, you could say, the past couple years as well. So it's interesting to see Detroit. Now, technically, Detroit's ahead of Toronto by points. Toronto does have an edge in games played, so by point percentage, they are slightly ahead, but technically, just the NHL standings are defaulted to go by points. So as of that, they are, because, games in hand are only good if you win them. And we don't know what's going to happen there just yet, right? So they're in a wild card spot. I mean, they're not out of the playoffs. It's just not doom and gloom, but there's certainly cause for concern. I mean, we've seen this team have its moments this year where they've looked really good, and they've had their moments where they've struggled against a lot of weak teams. As well, like some of the bottom feeders, like your Chicagos, your Columbuses, like they have not done well. It's weird. I don't know if they have a hard time getting motivated or they're overconfident. I don't know what it is, but they've certainly struggled with those top teams, or bottom teams, points that they absolutely need to be putting in the bank, and it's not happening. In this recent skid, we've seen John Tavares be pointless in a bit. He hasn't played well the last 4 or 5 games. To be completely blunt and honest, I've seen a major change in William Nylander's game since he signed his mammoth 8-year contract extension. And if you watch this channel and you follow me and you know what my opinions have been, I've been a major William Nylander supporter. A lot of people were very much opposed to paying him. I know in the offseason, there was speculation that the Leafs wanted to pay him around 9, maybe 9.5. The talk was they would prefer 9 or less. They might go to 9.5. 10's pushing it, but definitely like 9.5 is like the top end. It's kind of what we were hearing. And he was like, okay, fine. I'm not doing that. I'm not taking less this time because I did last time. Although at the time when he signed, it didn't feel like less in the beginning. And I don't think it's fair to say when William Nylander signed the other contract that's expiring here, around his cap, it's like 6.9 or whatever it is. It was not, in my opinion, under market value at the time of signing, but it had really good potential to age well and become a steal for the Leafs, and it did. But that was not a guarantee in the beginning. When he first signed it, there were people that thought it was too much. But as far as I can remember and what we heard through the media, it sure sounded like he got pretty close to what he wanted. And obviously that holdout was, it took a major impact on his season because when William Nylander first came back after getting that deal done at the 11th hour before the cutoff to sign, or he couldn't play for the season, he wasn't good. You miss all of training camp and 2-3 months of the season, it's going to take a while. The first couple months he played, a month or plus, he was, not only was he not good, he was flat out bad. There was a lot of Nylander bashing, and it took a while for him to live up to that contract, and then he exceeded it, and he kind of seems to be like he'll be the darling of Toronto for a while, and then he'll be, despise. And I think a lot of it boils down to how people feel about the contract more than anything else. And I completely understand that. And Marner's kind of going to be the next one and probably be in that category. I mean, we saw them give big money to Austin Matthews, and most people have no issues with that. It seems like Matthews, he's the scoring center, the guy who is consistently has a chance to be 50, 60 goals. I don't think anybody has issues with Matthews getting paid. At least I've never really seen much of it publicly in the media or on social media. Nylander and Marner tend to be more of the lightning rods, and it tends to not be consistent. It's hot or cold. They tend to kind of take their turns at times. But right now, you got Willie, who just signed an 8-year deal. You got Matthews, who just re-upped for an extension. Morgan Riley's still pretty early into his extension. John Tavares still has another year left, and then he'll be up for renewal, pending UFA, going on one more year. The belief is that he very much wants to stay in his hometown with the Leafs, still wants to try to win the Stanley Cup if they haven't done so by then. And I believe that there's probably, to some degree, a good chance that it happens. But a lot of it's going to boil down to, completely honest, I think he's going to have to take a fair bit less, a lot less than $11 million. And how much of that, how low is he willing to go? And that might play a role. I think there's a really high probability he re-signs and stays. But if for some reason it doesn't work out, it would be because he wouldn't go low enough for them. And I don't know what that number is going to be. But the other thing that's coming up, too, is Mitch Marner. Now, Marner, of course, he just had his no-move clause kick in. He's the hometown boy, like Tavares. You could tell in his recent media interviews, the past couple of games, post-game, he said some things that didn't really make sense, talking about how they, he brought it up, but we don't care about the outside noise. We still think we're playing good. We thought there was lots of good things going on. We were good defensively. A lot of things that just contradicted what everybody's seen on the ice. And it's fine for him trying his best to pull off a positive spin. He wants to make sure people still see that the group is still cohesive together and that they're, still believing in each other and they feel like they're doing a lot of good things. And that's fine. I get that. That's just how these players are trained to speak to the media. But a lot of people think at this point, and there's a lot of it out there. I've seen it from a ton of places. I'm not going to reference just one source here. That the Leafs at their current construction are not cup contenders. Now, you know what? We might get to May, June, and this video may not age well if they somehow pull it off. But there's a lot of people, including Elliot Friedman, that thinks, are the Leafs even going to bother being buyers at the deadline? Do they believe that this team, as constructed right now, that you can make a few additions like teams typically do at the deadline and seriously be cup contenders? Is it worth spending more assets? And the answer, a lot of people think, is probably not. If you look at it, this team certainly has a lot of flaws on the blue line. Goaltending has been a big concern, especially since the Joseph Woll injury. I mean, I hope for their sake and his own sake that when Woll returns, which is probably from the time of this recording, a week to 10 days away, I'm estimating based on what we've heard. I know he's on the Western road trip, but he's not expected to play. May play after. So it's difficult to say exactly when he gets between the pipes. But Samsonov's been back, got one game in. They lost. He gave up a heartbreaking game-winning goal near the end to the Red Wings and Kopp. I'm sure he'd love to have that one back. But for the most part, he was good. And giving up 3 goals, considering what we were seeing in a Samsonov before, I thought it was a good performance. And it was definitely good enough to give him more chances at this point. But when Woll returns, you do have a 3-goalie system. It's going to, I understand they're going to be in that boat. They don't want to put Jones on waivers and send him down because he's probably going to get picked up. He's been pretty decent. He's had some not great games too, but for the most part, he's been good enough. As a number 3, he's done his job, So they're going to have to carry 3 goalies. That creates a cap problem too. I mean, that's obviously not a cap problem for future years, like we're talking about more with Marner, but still, there's lots of flaws. And the blue line, a lot of people say you win championships with defense. And if you look at the recent Stanley Cup champions, their blue lines were absolutely huge and instrumental in that. And the Maple Leafs, a lot of people say the way they're constructed, you've got Morgan Riley, by far the team's best D. But some even question if he's a true number 1 or is he just a really good number 2D. And no matter how you feel about that, it doesn't matter. Most teams are going to need at least 2 defensemen equal or better than Morgan Rielly. And then the problem is you got a lot of other D on that team, which right now seem like they're more like 5, 6, 7 D. Not necessarily like a 3 or a strong 4, more like a third pair. Like you got McCabe, like he's probably got a bit of a future there, but like Giordano's certainly slowed down. Brody hasn't been good. Benoit's been all right, but limited role. I think Benoit's again probably a third pair. A lot of teams he's going to probably be a 6, 7. Timmins has been okay when limited action, but again, they need another Rielly. Like they need somebody as good as Rielly. They need another top ND. Some people let's say that Rielly really should be a number 2. And he could play top pair, but if his partner was really as good as him or better, they would be a lot better team from the back end. You need to solidify the goaltending, and maybe the answer to that is Joseph Woll. Maybe that'll come if he can stay healthy. Going into next year, they've got 11 players signed. That's it for $65.5 million. So that's, as of the salary cap today, that's $18 million available. Of course, the cap's going to go up, so they're probably going to have like 22, 23 million. But you got to sign another 11 players. That's only an average of $2 million. Now, thankfully, this Marner contract extension wouldn't kick into the year after, so you're talking about another increase at that point in the cap, and maybe Tavares' contract comes down by then. You could probably work it out. Money-wise, could they pay Marner a bit of a raise and keep Tavares at a lower salary and keep those core 4 guys? Financially, yes, it can happen. But a lot of people say the definition of an insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Take a look at some other teams around the league. They don't usually get the core players this many chances to win before they try something new and trade away at least one piece to shake things up and go with a different mix. It's just that simple. And if you look at the troubles in the back end, the best way to accomplish that is you're going to have to give up value for value. The only area you really have value is with high-end forwards. You just paid Nylander. You're not moving Matthews. Tavares, to be honest, he's not going to waive even if you ask him, and the interest isn't going to be there. Marner would generate a huge buzz. He would create a winger like him that's playmaker, can be 90-plus points. He would get a huge haul. If you find the right team with a high-end D that would be willing to move for him, that, to me, would make a lot of sense. And there's a lot of people out there that say, if you look at Marner, like, does he look like a happy guy? Like, when he talks to the media and stuff, like, it can be stressful playing at home. And he's lived out his childhood dream playing for his hometown team. But there's a lot of players that have done that. And eventually it gets so stressful that they just want to go somewhere quieter. They even talked about this very recently on the Steve Dangle podcast, noted Leaf fans. And, obviously Dangle's been a Leaf fan his whole life and loves those guys, but wants the team to win more than anything else. And he even said himself on a recent podcast that, he could see Marner accepting to go somewhere else and just to get out of the limelight a little bit and to not have that Toronto pressure. And it might be good for the team to shake things up because they're not getting it done. They're too top heavy. We've been saying it for years. And Kyle Dubas kind of kept coming back and doubling down, tripling down. And now you get Brad Tree living there. And really his first offseason as a Leafs GM, it really wasn't good. I mean, let's just be honest here. Look at what he did. Most of what he did didn't work out. His best move in the offseason turned out to be signing Marty Jones. Jones, the third string goaltender, was his best move. And nobody would have predicted that in the summer when these were going down. I mean, when I seen that, I was like, oh, okay. He'll be a good number 3, but they might lose him on waivers. That was my first gut instinct. Not a bad signing if he's a 3. And he's worked out great at a cheap price. But they brought in Klingberg. That failed horribly. They brought in Ryan Reeves. And to be honest, before the Reeves injury, to me, he wasn't effective. I don't think that's what they needed. I know there's a difference of opinions out there, and you can say what you want. It doesn't matter if you really love Reeves and think he's a great fit or he's not. As of today, at least, we haven't seen the effect, and it hasn't worked out. That could change, though. You've also got other moves like Domi and Bertuzzi. They've had their moments, but I think a lot of people expected a lot more out of both of these guys. And I certainly think it's fair to question that they have a future in Toronto. I don't think that's a given. We'll see. There's enough hockey left. But as of right now, it's not great. They've only been okay. And at times not okay. Another boo-boo, in my opinion, was giving David Kampf the term that they did. Signing him, period, was fine. But I think you get a little bit of an overpayment and way too much term. You don't give bottom six forwards 4, 5, 6 year deals. You just don't. They are way easier to replace than a top six forward. And that's why you look around the NHL, it's rare to see a bottom six guy get term. They gave him term. And he's in year one, and it's not going well. Thankfully it's not a ton of money, but still not a great signing. So really, the Tree Living era is not off to a flying start. We also kept Sheldon Keefe, and obviously that they get that worked out for him to stay and extend. But a lot of people questioning if Keefe's is he gonna be gone? I honestly don't know if they can blame this on coaching. Have there been some questionable coaching moves? Sure, but I think you could say that about a lot of coaches. I really don't know how Shanahan and Trey Living feel about Sheldon at this point. But at the end of the day, this team right now, the way they've been playing this year, and if you look at the standings, and like I said, this is the standings as of Thursday, before Thursday games are played. I'll show you here on the screen. They're out of the top 3. They're in a wild card spot, and they have 5 teams breathing down their neck. You've got the Lightning and the Habs in their own division. The Habs are 5 points back. It might not seem like a lot, but they still got to play each other a few times. That could change in a heartbeat. But, the Habs might be the least of their worries right now amongst these teams, but it's still a striking distance. The Lightning, I would worry about the Lightning. You get the Penguins, the Capitals, and the Islanders in the Metro all 2 points back. And the Devils are only 3, and the Devils have been through a ton of injuries. They get healthy in the second half. 3 points is not a lot to make up. The Maple Leafs are, like I said, within 3 points of having 4 teams, maybe 5 past them. As many as 6 could do it if they get in a prolonged tailspin. The way the point system works in the NHL, it would take a bigger extended losing streak for that to happen. But it really, right now they're on a skid. If it extends much further, playoffs are not a given right now. And I never thought we'd say that. So I think it's fair to say this version of the Toronto Maple Leafs is looking like they're very likely going to take a step back. Like I said, half a season left. Maybe this won't age well. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but it doesn't look good at the moment. And we'll see what changes make and what changes they make internally with what they already have, and maybe some players pick it up, but it's not good. And if they're going to make a trade, like I said, you're not going to trade Tavares. No full no move clause, no way he waives, and he's got 1 year left at $11 million. Nobody's taking that. You just extend it, Matthews and Nylander. Marner's your last guy of your core to be extended. 1 year remaining. Sure, he's got a no move. But at what point is he going to be like, okay, the stress, the media, the pressure, I'm sick of it. I would just like to play somewhere else. You can see it on his face at times, and you got to wonder if that's what he's thinking. I'm not going to put words in his mouth and say he's thinking that because I don't know that. But it just really makes you think and wonder if it would be better for him, right? He's going to want on his next contract something comparable to Matthews. He's always used Matthews as his comparable. And Matthews plays center, scores a few more goals, so obviously he's going to be making more, but not drastically more, right? Like their contracts have only ever been maybe $500,000 apart or whatever it was. If he's going to probably want around the 13 mark, can you have 3 players making, or 2 players over 13, 1 over 11, for at least 1 year, 2 over 11? I mean, that's it's over $50 million and 4 guys. You throw Riley in the mix, and then, like I said, you can't give your supporting staff any money, so you're constantly scraping the barrel for replacement players to fill out your bottom 6 and your third pair D. Well, in some cases, your top 4 too. Really, it's like Something's got to give. And if you look around the league, I mean, I don't know what they would do this, but I just took a scan of the NHL standings and looked at the teams. Like, what stud defenseman would be available? If they want to pull this off, it's not going to be easy, right? And I was like, well, Kyle Dubas has a problem in Pittsburgh. Is there any chance they would want to look at Karlsson? Now, the only problem, I mean, Karlsson is a stud. He is one of the greatest D of his generation. You know, we've seen him kind of be yin and yang now at times. You know, risky, yes. Big contract, though. So from a money perspective, at least, it wouldn't be as complicated. But, you know, there's the familiarity with Dubas and Pittsburgh. From a Pittsburgh standpoint alone, not just think of it from their perspective. If they pulled off a trade and those two were the focal point, I'm not saying one for one, but they were the main players in it. It gets them a high-end forward to play the last couple of years with Crosby and Malkin. It probably allows Pittsburgh to move on from Gensel. It gets a younger guy in there who can kind of still be a really top player to eventually be the top guy when those guys retire. Familiarity, you know, with the GM. There's lots, you know, connections. It could work from their perspective. From Toronto, though, you do get a top defenseman, but he's much older. You know, there's... what's the age gap between Karlsson and Marner? I'd have to look it up, but I think it's like 6 years or something like that. You know, it's risky. You know, I looked around and said, well, would Nashville ever consider moving Yossi? Again, great player, a little bit older though. Are you going to find a number one D that's, say, 25 years old in the prime of his career to swap for Marner? It's not going to be easy. So as much as I think this is something they should explore, and a lot of people think it's something they should do, it's easier said than done. It really is. But in my opinion, if they moved a guy like Marner, they might be better off rather than get one stud D making $10 million. They'd probably be better off to have three players making 6 to 7 or something in that range. You know, or well, I guess it wouldn't be that much, but you know, more players that are making this a little less so you can spread it out more. You know, anyways, at the end of the day, the Leafs have a problem. There's quite likely that we're going to see a shakeup. You would think, right? Like I said, it's the definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over again. You never see core groups of players in the NHL be given, 6, 7, 8 years to get a job done. You finally get new management. He's stuck with it. I think, and the main reason, I think when he took the job, Trey Living was rumored to be told by Shanahan that the top 4 guys aren't going anywhere. Like, a trade of that magnitude is going to go through Shanny. He's going to have to make that call. Unfortunately, I think Trey Living's hands are tied unless he gets a blessing. So we'll see what happens. But do the Leafs have an issue? Is a core 4 trade likely? And does it make sense to everybody that Marner would be the guy if they go down that road? Let me know your thoughts and give me some mock trades on what could work to help this team move forward. If they did move Marner, in the comments, we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.